everybody. Welcome to the latest in our webinar series. And we've got Judith Germain back. I had to fight for you. I had to get my people, spoke to your people for months on end, and we're finally back together, mate. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks. All about you, Chris?
I'm really good. I'm looking forward to this bank holiday weekend more than you would know. I love my job and I love working with agencies, but I've done a lot of traveling to see agencies in the last couple of weeks. So very much looking forward to creating a Chris-shaped dent in the sofa over the course of the weekend. For those who don't know who Judith is one of our favorite OMG coaches. She also runs her own coaching business. Tell us all about it, Judith. Tell us who you are.
Hi, well, I'm Judith Germain, and I'm all about creating clear thinking and decisive leaders. And we do that through the Maverick Paradox, which is a boutique leadership consultancy. And we have Maverick Paradox Media that has a magazine and a podcast.
I'm a very happy writer for that magazine. One time so far, but hopefully more in the future. We'll see. Thank you so much for coming on today, Judith. We're going to be talking today about core identity and how it can bring more clients. I think there's a few bits I'm guessing that we need to get across very quickly, because I think sometimes it's obvious what I mean when I say these things, and I kind of want to make sure that we're all talking from the same song sheet, shall we say. So tell us what you mean around knowing your core identity, because I see it's trademarked, so there must mean something very much specific.
Yeah, it is. It's more specific than you would imagine. I think if you think about it, your core identity really looks at you in three perspectives. So actually you when you're in your business and what your business does. So what is the business proposition? What is the processes that are running through the business? What is it that makes you unique? How do you have the right proposition story, and how do you get that out there? And then you look at, so that's like your core proposition. And then you look at your core impact. So are you somebody who's a strategist? Are you a creator? What is the impact that you make in your business and with your clients? And how do you integrate that with your core proposition? And finally, you have your core talent. So you could describe the core talent as your behavioral DNA. How do you behave with each other? What's the core thing that you've been doing since childhood that is great? So for me, it's all about seeing truth, which means that I'm hyper insightful. So when you get those three components and you integrate them and align them, you get your core identity for your business.
I love that. It's an umbrella in a sense that wraps around quite a lot of things that people see as individual and tick box style type things. I've done that. But actually, if you wrap it into this, your core identity, I think that's quite neat. I like it.
Thank you. It's more than purpose, because I think sometimes people think, oh, it's all about my purpose and what my passion is. It's how that is demonstrated. So it's kind of hard business with soft, fluffy you. It's that, it's you and the business together that gives the core identity.
For those who aren't in the UK watching this, the first thought I had when you said that was the Dime Bar advert, hard on the inside, soft on the outside, armadillos or something or other. There's the hard bit about the business, the soft bit about you, and it all kind of encapsulates into something quite cool. So you mentioned a few pillars. I know that we'll come on to some of this, and there's some pieces that this involves. And I know that it's not as simple as watch the webinar and you'll get it, and hence why you exist in this world. So what does good look like? How does it work? And I guess on the opposite end of things, there must be it's almost like a three-way seesaw, isn't it? If one thing's not done at all, but something is really heavily focused on, then maybe there's a problem there. So what does good look like then?
Good looks like you are doing the work that you set your business up to do in the first place. So we often come out of corporate life with this is the thing that I want to do. And so your digital agency, I want to help people, be more visible and to get clients that they want. Great. However, you may end up with clients that you don't really want because they were the ones that were paying you when you weren't sure what your proposition was.
Oh, yeah.
So then it becomes like a trap. So your business has you trapped. You're now working with people you don't want to work with at a price point you don't want to work at. And you're just not happy, right? But you can't escape because all your work's coming from referrals. You don't know how to get out of that.
Yeah.
So, that's when it's not looking good. So when it's looking good is that you are doing something that you remain passionate with. So if I said, Chris, if the only thing you could possibly do is this, you'd be like, great, my work is done. I am happy.
Yeah.
So when you're totally aligned, so you've not only have you got, because you can have happy clients that pay a lot of money and you be completely depressed. And there's no point in that. So you want something to be totally and utterly aligned with you and with the clients that you want to serve.
Cool. So I guess where it fails then, it isn't always just the start, it's the consistency around it as well, isn't it? Because it can be really easy to jump back into something that's paying well, but it isn't a fit. And I think it's the same in all walks of life, in every aspect, personal and professional. If it's not a fit, it doesn't feel comfortable. If it doesn't feel comfortable, you're not happy.
And I think, sorry.
Please, no.
People get seduced into marketing. So it sounds good.
Yeah.
Or they are told, find that gap in the market. Position yourself in the gap. Well, that's so 1980, right? So that gap is you all squished up. It is much better for you to find what you really, really want and to focus what you really, really want to do in a way that people will want to buy it. So it's not just, I want to do this. It's like, well, how do you fashion that passion and your skill set into something people want to buy, and then create the tribe around that so that people are fighting to buy. So it's about pulling rather than pushing.
And that reminds me of we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, you and I, about what kind of agencies are a perfect fit for you and things like that. And I remember we kind of both agreed that we're not by the book, as it were. And quite a lot of the books say your 5 Ps style type thing and all that sort of stuff. And I think that when you say, people are seduced by marketing, I think you're right. And the irony is quite a lot of digital agencies, they are great at SEO or PPC or social media and that sort of stuff for other people because they're following someone else's strategy, brand, tone of voice, and that sort of thing. And the second they try and do it for themselves, they'll fall back to a blog post or a book or something and forget this core identity bit that isn't just a bit, it's a lot. And it's the lot that means that almost all of your marketing should fall off of you from that. It should just flow. And it isn't as simple as, tick a box, do an exercise with someone, or read a blog and write a spreadsheet. It's not that easy.
No, I do a lot of work with marketing and PR people, and for the exact same reason, because what you're required when you run your own agency is to come up with your own strategy that fits and is aligned to you. And let's face it, right now, people have money to spend, but they spend it with people that they're aligned with. You can find any coach, any digital agency, but why do you want to, what is it about that one that's special that you want to spend your money with?
Yeah, I think you're right. Where would you typically start though? Let's say established agency, been running quite a while. They have the roller coaster, the champagne on the way up, the punches in the face on the way down. They're kind of getting a bit fed up with that, and they've identified to a degree within their expertise that there's something at the fundamental level around the agency. Not what they're doing, because they're great at what they do, but they lose clients. They find it hard to attract the right people, staff and clients. Where would you start? What would be one of the first things that you would ask?
Right back to first principles. What is it that you do? What are the solutions that you're providing? And who are the clients that you want to go for, and where you are, or where do you want to be in the next X period of time?
Yeah.
And I think, because I've worked with a lot of established companies 30, 40 years old, but they've had that drift. So they're no different from the startup. They've forgotten who they are. And so you have to go right back to first principles and discover who that who is. So there's who the individual and who the business, and they're not the same. Yeah. They may be some links, but they're not the same. And you need to be very clear which who we're talking to and how do we line them so it doesn't look odd.
Yeah.
We all see businesses that are really great, and then they have a new CEO that just doesn't seem to gel with the brand of the business. And then you can lose customers just because of that mismatch.
Spot on. I totally agree. I think the one part of this is that you kind of the who and the who are different who's, like you say. And let's say you've identified that you're really good at paid advertising for e-commerce brands. Okay, so how do you talk to a brand? How do you talk to an e-commerce brand? That's one who. Okay, you make your messaging and your case studies read all about how you help that individual type of niche and things like that. But the who that's actually the who is the person that you need to talk to convince of your skill, your services, your positioning being right. And usually that's the marketing manager or the owner or the head of performance or something like that. And if you don't know, if you're not looking at like who that is that you need to talk to, the pains and the problems and that they have aren't going to align with the way that you're explaining your solutions and your benefits of all of the quality of work that you do. It's really hard to do that if you don't ask it. And I cannot stand assumptions when it comes to these things. Oh, my gut says this is the right way to do it because it sounds right. And like you said about the marketing, it feels like, it sounds right, it must be right. It's not. It's almost always
and there's
not.
no depth to it. So exactly. If we recognize now that as the experts, people aren't coming to us to explain everything. We are the last people they speak to. They've gone everywhere else. They've come to you and they're now checking for their own culture fit. Okay. Because they've pretty much decided before when they've come to you. Yeah. So we need to be thinking about how do we interact with the people and what is it that they're really looking for. I mean, I think Apple's a really good thing, isn't it? So you think Apple has its brand, and then you had Steve Jobs that had his own brand, and there was a good linkage between the two. Yeah. But Apple didn't fall when Steve left because their own business brand was strong. Yeah. So when Tim Cook took over, yes, he wasn't Steve Jobs, but it didn't destroy Apple. Because while Steve Jobs managed to have his own brand and Apple and keep them aligned, but different. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what core identity is about.
Brilliant segue onto what we're going to talk about now. Can a marketing position be enough? Like, is that one part of the process? Like, what's the minimum level I need to do? I'm a lazy person. Or to put it in a nice way.
The absolute minimum you want to do is not a marketing proposition, because if you think about it, marketing is a surface layer thing. How many times have you gone to somebody who's giving you, I don't know, their 60-second pitch, and then you ask questions and there's nothing else they've got to say because they don't know anything else. They know their pitch and that's it. Yeah. When I talk about a business proposition, that is, yes, the final thing is how does it sound? What's the marketing of this proposition? But the core of it is define succinctly, what is this business all about? How do you relate to this business? What are the core processes of this business? And when I say process, I'll give you mine. So my core process of my business is strategize, innovate, execute. So no matter what I do, I'm always, what's the strategy? Where are we going? What we're doing? Okay, let's innovate. Let's get something new. Let's do. And then look at how do you move to execution? So whether I am training, talking, mentoring, shopping, that's my thing. I strategize. So every business, every individual has the same thing. They have a process. Yeah. So you have to define that process, align it to what the business is, and then you look at how you market that. And then when people ask you those deep questions, you have all the answers because you've done the foundational work. So the very bare minimum you have to do is have a business proposition that is clear, succinct, and aligned, and then you can move on to how you demonstrate that and how you say about it.
And I've had this conversation a few times with agency leaders. how do I get there? How do I start that off? Because I'm spending so much time working on 10 services with 15 staff and 35 clients. Everything needs attention all the time. I always look at it kind of like in a intersecting Venn diagram of what are you really good at that you can deliver? Like what is that? So let's say it's SEO. What do you love doing? And then you think, well, I love mountain biking. I love SEO for mountain biking would be quite cool. Can I make money out of it? No. Well, then I'm not gonna. That's not going to be a core business focus, is it for me? And you work. It's iterative, but if you start with like a blank slate of like what is it that you are good at, what you love, and what you can get money out of, then you can pull all of the other stuff away. Pretend you're starting from zero, because if you're not kind of from a mindset point of view starting from zero, I don't think you can come up with this core identity at all.
No, and the good thing for those who are absolutely lazy is I've managed to find a way of doing the core identity in 5.5 hours. So
right,
I've been doing it for a long time.
Your phone's going to be ringing off the hook in a minute, Judith.
And the thing is, it's absolutely foundational, because once you have that, that's where you build the business around, and it makes it easier, and it makes the sales calls quicker. Because you can say, this is what you're doing, this is how, and in that, and yes, that's a great process, and you build from that. Obviously, you don't go, look, that's the end of it. But by the end of that 5.5 hours, you absolutely know what makes you different. What's the proposition stories that you run? What are your propositions? Because quite often I find when we look at the business proposition, is people look at like one surface that they have, and then when you break it down, I can look at it and go, gosh, you could sell 5, 6, 10, 20 different things off of this. Which is the first one? What's the most important right now? Which is the one that can give me the quickest amount of money?
Yep.
Okay, we'll develop that one. But what's the long term? So you're making sure that the long term is going. So I think for me, it's when I do it, looking at core proposition, it's I might get them to do it for homework, all the stuff that you were saying, but when we actually get together, it's very focused on tell me how this was, how do you do this, tell me. So lots of questions, and then from there on, like, this seems to be a process, and we work that through.
And homework is essential. So I like how you've not tied that into the 5 hours, but I understand exactly.
Oh yeah, they have homework to do when I'm
not. I mean, I love that Bill Gates quote. If you need something done well, hire a lazy person, because they'll find the quick way of doing it, or something along those lines. I love a shortcut, but I hate taking shortcuts for the sake of future results. And I think that sometimes some of this stuff is so tied to the long-term future of you or the business or both, that it's so kind of hard to unpick what you've done. If you've been running an agency for 5 years and you've got a decent team of nice people, it's very hard to see to sort of unpick that a little bit into something of meaning, isn't it?
Yeah, and also there's when you're too close to it, you're too close to it. But there's an advantage of an external person that's worked across a number of industries, because you can take great learning from one and apply it to another. Yeah. And I think that's what gets missed if you run a business which is tight in one sector or one niche. You miss the fact that X industry does it this way. So how about taking a bit of that? And that's why I think external help is often quicker and more meaningful, because there's no ego tied to it. It's like you genuinely want to partner with this business to get this thing right. Yeah. And I don't have to worry about, I've been doing this for 20 years and this is the bit I love.
Exactly. And I think it's one of those things again, isn't it, where a bit of external help is a different perspective, or at least a different tone of voice in the room, which you're not used to. So it facilitates a different kind of thinking. One thing that we might have a different thought on here is around personal brand. And part of a core identity might well involve it will involve branding. How important in all of that is a personal brand in an agency? The reason I ask this, and I'm asking this genuinely of you, is that an awful lot of agencies will start because the owner is really good at what they do, and they might be really keen on speaking at events and all those sorts of things. But what can happen is they then become the business, which is really, really bad eventually, because you've got to be in all the client meetings, you've got to be the face of everything. And it's quite hard to unpick yourself from that. So how important would you say it is to have?
I'm trying not to say it depends. My view.
Everyone in marketing knows that they love that term.
I think it really this is what the dependency on it. I think when you start and you're trying to build something that perhaps you might sell, then it's really, really important to have a very strong brand of what that means. But then when you're trying to sell services to that brand, you have to think about how is that going to be sold. Now, your personal brand, your reputation, your credibility, the fact that you're a public speaker may well be stronger at that point than your business brand. So therefore, you will be leveraging. And that's why I think it's important when you do your business proposition, you look at what is the brand of the business, and that will be based from the business proposition. And then part of that core identity, you have your own personal brand, and how do you leverage that? Because you want to, if you are clear what your brand is, the business brand, and you're clear of your personal brand, as you grow and you hire people, you're going to be hiring into the business brand individuals that can get on and aligned into your own personal culture. So when you know the separation of the two, you're very clear as to where you want to go. And it's a bit like, the Maverick paradox, and a personal brand, part of my personal brand is the fact that I think differently. That's totally, and I'm quite challenging. And that's part of Maverick paradox. But I have other people that work for me who aren't like that. So it's important to make sure that I'm clear when I'm doing things, which brand is being leveraged at which point, and making sure there's a clear identity split.
Yeah. And I guess at some point in time, because you have a plan, you should have a strategy in your agency. If you don't, you should speak to us.
Yes.
If you have a plan, that's when you can start making the right kind of moves from an external perspective to not push, but guide your leadership team and your team into positions where their brand, the brand of the business, is part of their personal brand, and they go out and speak at events, or they're part of the marketing materials and things like that. And it's part, you're not running away from the whole thing, but you're still part of the machine. And I think it's nice to do for your team as well, because they'll feel like they're loved, and there's some value for them.
Because if you think about it, the worst thing you can do is hire an alignment to the personal brand for a business that you want to scale.
Yeah.
Because then as you personally develop and find new interests, you'll find that the people that you've hired can't work in your brand because it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah.
And that's part of the things that happen when people, when people start up and it's all about the founder, and they hire their first few employees and they're very founder driven. But as it grows, everyone starts saying that culture is different. Because they've waited until it's grown to develop the culture of the business, when you should be thinking of doing that at the beginning, so that it expands as it grows, rather than you're trying to put it on.
Exactly. I had a conversation with an agent, with a chap yesterday, who is moving from a freelance role. He wants to grow that into an agency model. And he was saying, what's the first steps? And I was like, beyond the normal things like insurance and stuff like that, there's an awful lot of things to consider for 3 years in the future. If you're not thinking way further than getting your domain name and your website and call your business name, you're going to miss something, and it will ultimately hurt you. And I think you bang on there with, if you prepare the beginnings of your business with a view of the future from a culture point of view, where do we want to be? What are we? Who are we? It makes it a lot easier as the business grows. Like you say, you might get married, or you might have children, or you might have more time away. You might get new hobbies.
We might have a pandemic that completely shifts our business model.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe that will happen. Hopefully never again, but maybe. But I think all of those things, if you built the culture first, it shouldn't change, because usually an agency's culture is relatively closely tied, should we say, to your the values that you set or have early doors, and the kind of the core purpose of the business shouldn't really change. And that, unless you fundamentally change as a person, it's very hard for that to happen.
Yeah, because there's going to be a time when you're going to want to walk away from the business. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to sell the business. It might be that you have other interests now and you want to maybe do another company, or you may, or what you're doing in your agency, there's one particular bit you love the most. So that's what, you know, it's not unusual to see the CEO becomes the COO with a new CEO because they want to do this division or this thing in particular. So you have to be careful of where you take the ties. And I think when people are talking about strategy, I think they're thinking of an old corporate model, like 10 years out, tons of paper. And it's really simple. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What's the key to get there? Fine. Now we know where we're going. And then you can go back to the tactical stuff. Yeah. And that allows you to move to strategy where you need to.
It's amazing how little people have progressed beyond. It's all these books, mate. People writing all these books, and they're saying all these words that are very much regurgitated versions of the same thing. If you've got if you're looking at a 10-year strategy, fine. If you're a massive business and you've got thousands of shareholders who all demand their pound of flesh every year, you need to produce lots and lots of paper to prove or suggest where you're going, because that's what they need. But that's not what really is needed when you're looking at agencies and smaller service businesses. You need to go, I personally want to have £100,000 a year post-tax income. I want to have 3 holidays a year abroad without taking my laptop. I want to be able to go to industry events and, because I have a massive ego, be recognized. And then you go, okay, well, in order to do that professionally, I need to be this, and this. And that then is, 2 or 3 years down the line. And it's not loads of paper. That's a vision. That's where I want to be. And then the gap between where you are now and where you want to go is the core tenets of your strategy. And like you say, everything else then becomes very tactical. But the core identity piece should be something that shouldn't change.
No, because when you're working it out, you're already factoring where you think that you may be going, and everything is an innovation and an evolutionary step, I think. And I think that's the bit that's missed. It's not, because if you have a business that doesn't develop, nurture and grow, then it's dead anyway. So you're going to expect it to move and grow anyway, and things will change. But the point is, once you've done the process, if there's any massive revolutionary changes, you just redo it. It's a bit like having a child, getting them to school age at 5 and go, parenting's done now.
Yes, school can, well, I mean, that does typically happen in the UK at the minute, I'm afraid. Parenting is done now. The teachers will parent you until you're 16.
No, you come back and you go, oh, let's nudge here and give more flexibility here. And of course you'll do that. And I think that's only natural. But what's key is being able to, I always work, when I work with people, and even myself when I change, is I look at retrofitting in a way, so that when you're moving into that new direction, how different is it? What's the story between the new direction and the old direction? Because you want there to be a story of some type so that people can follow you. So they don't have a huge shock and go, oh my gosh, you're completely over there. They can go, oh, this is why we're at this point. I can see why you're moving to this place.
So something's just occurred to me. If you're buying an agency, or you've been bought by another agency, and there's essentially 2 identities at that point, but they are going to be eventually one entity, how would you, like, I know that it's an it depends answer in many senses, because you don't know who is buying whom and things like that, but is there anything kind of from a logical point of view that would make sense to start that process off? Because the last thing you want to do is be a schizophrenic Frankenstein identity monster.
Yeah, I do a load of this, lots of this culture change stuff. Back to first principles. What is the purpose of this entity? Because that's back to the strategy.
Yeah.
why did we get to where we are? What do we want this thing to do? Where do you want to be? Who are the types of people? What, go right back to the whys and the whats. Once we understand those hard measures, then it's all about behavioural change. So then you're putting together interventions and designing in behavioural change. Because nothing's going to happen until people behave differently. Right?
True.
You can't change an attitude. It's impossible. I can't make you change your attitude, but I can make you change your behaviour. And when you change your behaviour, you will change your attitude yourself. I won't need to do that.
Yeah.
Your behaviour, you'll have cognitive dissonance and you'll move to another behavioural thing. So back to the strategy. What's the point? The innovation comes around how do we do the behavioural change that we want, and then you execute it and embed it in. So that may mean a change of policies, that may mean change of working. It will certainly mean the top team will need to go through their own collective impact process to have a look to see how they're going to role model this change moving forward.
So the team bit interests me a little bit, because in a different scenario, you're a couple of years into your agency, say 3 to 5 years in. You've just kind of got to the point where, oh my gosh, we don't really have a core identity. We need to now go back to that first principles thing. I've seen this happen before, and I know that it's not the right thing to do. The agency leader will, with all good faith, go as best they can to get as much of this done as possible. It will, to all intents and purposes, be spot on the money, perfect, everything done exactly how it needs to be done. In terms of the outcomes, they read well, it looks great, it does tick the right boxes. Then they go and they get their big PowerPoint presentation and they just reveal it to the business and they say, this is what we are, this is who we are. How involved do you think the entire business needs to be, or let's say an agency of, say, 15 to 20 people? How involved should everyone be in these sorts of things?
I think it depends. I think the determinant factor is, what is the current culture of the organisation? So if it's a culture where everything's always discussed and you want to move it, you can't go with this is the new thing. But what you might not want to do is you might want to have a small number of people that you consult with. So let's assume, let's just go back. This is my HR hat on. Let's assume there's no restructuring or anything like that. This is just a simple change.
Yeah.
So there's none of that. So then you'd have a small group of people that you would actually discuss and talk with. Then you'd come up with a plan of this is what it should be. And then you could have awareness type meetings. Changes come in. This is the type of thing we're thinking about. So there is discussion, not consultation, but there's discussion about change and what it would look like. And then you make the change. And depending on the maturity of the organisation will determine whether you need to do any sort of training or facilitation. So if there's like a lot of bad will or people not like to change, you probably want to do some very targeted interventions there, whether that's a facilitated workshop with somebody outside the company or something like that to go through. So I think the determinant is, what culture do you have already?
Yeah,
because it might well be a culture where they go, great, and then they'll just go, let's just do it. Or it might be like, no, I'm not happy about that. And in which case you'll have to do more to make the behaviour change.
We did some of the first principles stuff a few days ago with an agency leader, and it was quite funny. At the end of it, he was not disappointed. Isn't the right word. He was kind of not. He was unhappy that there weren't any surprises. That at the end of this session with the team and talking all about like who we are and what all of the key sort of beginning pieces of like what are we as a business. He was unhappy in a sense, not in a bad way, but he was hoping that there would be some curveballs or there'd be some dissent or some disagreement. But actually, it just turns out that he's already got really good people who are very aligned, and they spent 2.5 hours in the morning and 2.5 hours in the afternoon to essentially be able to write down who they are because it existed already. And I thought that was wonderful because, now they've got words to put to concepts and feelings that they implicitly had. But and I think that's great because they can people can walk through the door for interviews now, and they can all say the same kind of thing, and same with elevator pitches at networking events and all sorts of things like that. But sometimes you've done it by accident.
Yeah, great leaders will have done it probably not by accident, but it might not have felt like they've put a lot of effort into it.
Yes.
Because it's quite natural. Because for in the past used to come in to turn around departments, and those kind of things felt quite easy and natural to do. Because that's what I do.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily easy and natural for everybody. So I think sometimes it feels like an accident when they've actually been doing it quite intentionally, but it was an easy task for them to do.
Yeah, agreed. And great leaders are not robots, are they? Because we're going to talk about AI. So just very clearly on the AI thing for an agency point of view, my line in the stand here, at the minute, it's a great tool. Use it as much as you can without destroying the value of the work that you can do. Don't rely on it to be a human being because they do not have empathy. So please don't use it to automate conversations with clients and things. I'm just saying that because I keep having this conversation. But from an identity point of view, how do you feel AI is making an impact here? Because it feels like we have to be a bit more human now. Prove it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and there have been influencers who have been tasked to prove that they're real because they appear to be more robotic, more
Did
AI.
they get a little
and of
box
course,
they had to click the tick box in or something like
and of
that?
course, there's AI influencers as well with millions of followers. So I can understand that. I think if you think about TikTok videos, and in each individual video looks pretty good, great dancing, but they're kind of meh because even though they're uniquely different, there are so many that it feels it's the same.
Yeah.
So cognitively, they are different, and you can see they're different, but they feel the same.
Yeah.
Because they're all the movements are in a certain position, and there's no innovation. So whilst they might have different moves, there's no innovation. And as I said before, I've got a magazine, and sometimes people send me AI written articles, and you can tell, and they're technically good, but they're uninteresting to read.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with agencies. And I think with digital agencies, and in fact, many freelance or agency type, similar agencies, to be more human is to be able to survive, because I think there'll be a backlash of, people will get fed up of generic content that doesn't really, so I guess it will persuade, and you'll get the clicks and you'll get the SEO and all that, but it leaves the reader feeling empty, like there's just something missing, and I don't know what it is.
You can certainly tell the difference. I've spent a long time on ChatGPT, for example, just playing with it and seeing how far it can go and things like that. And if you have one prompt which just says write a blog article about core identity, it'll write one, and it'll read well, and it'll read fine, but it's not told you anything you didn't kind of already know, because it's just logically written, predicted words. Then if you have a different prompt that's like, here's the business's tone of voice, and here's some examples of the owner transcribed content from videos, and here's some emails they've written and things like that, it's still predicted words in a pattern, but using someone else's tone of voice. Choice of words is different. It's just like the same article's been put through a thesaurus. You can't empirically tell which one's which usually, but there, like you say, there's something missing still.
Yeah, it feels kind of soulless. But I think more importantly for the agency is, will people spend money on what you can offer and the brilliance that you have if they believe that a chatbot with the relative plugins can do it better?
Yeah.
And this is where the identity the core identity stuff so important.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's a rush to the cheapest price.
Yeah, it's a race to the bottom. It's all of the bad things that will happen. I feel bad for juniors in these sorts of businesses at the minute who are essentially competing for jobs against robots. As much as they don't think they might well be right now, they'll get more sophisticated to the point where a junior's role is at risk. And that's the future of the industry. That's the future of agencies. That's the future of workforce. And if you take them out of the knees from an opportunity to have the experience to be great, then you're going to have no culture in your agency eventually, and it will be an AI.
Yeah, and I think depends on what your agency wants to be, isn't it? If you want to be something that is a cheap offering that produces generic work, then that's fine. You'll make money doing that.
Yeah,
you'll be harder to find.
There's plenty of people who want to spend very little money and have generic work done for them, you know.
But your ability to get the slice of the generic stuff becomes harder anyway, because if you've got the AI plugins that does their own SEO, for example, and they can tweet out what they've done and all the rest of it, and that's only 3 months in from the last innovation. You know, ChatGPT was only November of last year. For heaven's sake.
No, it's gone mental. It's already gone too quickly. I'm looking at it every day and I'm struggling to keep up. I don't know how anyone else is supposed to.
So if anybody with no experience can be an SEO person, then even if you want to produce generic stuff, even that becomes harder. How low are you going to get? A penny per post?
Yeah.
You know, so even in that market, you need to stand out and be different. And for the juniors, they need to look at their own core identity so that they may be employed, but they will have to have a side hustle so that they will get promoted and get employed elsewhere, because when you look for them, they stand out as something better than AI already.
Totally agree. And I think there's no point in going through any of this exercise of finding your core identity if it's just going to be a marketing exercise for robots to do the work. I welcome my future overlords, and if you are transcribing this in the future, and then you know, don't come for me, come for the other guys. But there's no empathy in a business like that, and businesses without that just there's like the content, there's no soul.
And also, I suppose we have to think about it, and I haven't really spent much time thinking about it. What will Generation Z buy? So right now, they're certainly into the influencers, the personalized outputs. When they get older, will they be buying generic AI, or will they want to feel some sort of connection? So you think about, like, there's that hotel in Japan that she's completely done by robots and AI, and you never meet a human. So you check into a robot, you know, chambermaid isn't a human and all the rest of it. And apparently people loved the first couple of days, but after that, they're dying to meet a person.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
I don't know. So
not for me. No. Okay. Well, I'm not going to go to that hotel in Japan. But yeah, no, I it's pretty horrendous, actually. Thank you very much, Judith, for this. It's been fantastic. Anyone who has any questions about Judith's 5-hour core identity workshop, give us a shout. We'll put you in touch. I can very much tell just from this webinar how much you like kind of live and breathe this, because every single time I talk to you, you're the same person, should we say, which is great. The authenticity is right, but the algorithm that you've built for your core identity is correct. So beep, boop, beep. Thank you very much for not being a robot, Judith.
Thanks for having me on again.
And look forward to speaking with you very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Replays are available across the whole of the web.